Welcome back, folks. We've been covering breaking news out of Colorado, where the state Supreme Court has ruled that the former president is ineligible for appearing on the Republican presidential primary ballot. So let's dig in. Calvin Dark is a political analyst and co-founder of RC Communications, and he joins us now. Calvin, as I was saying just a bit ago, I didn't know that we were going to be hearing so much news going into the holiday weekend, but here we are. Let's go ahead and get your take on this. I mean, what do you make of this ruling so far?
Yes, I don't think anybody on the Trump campaign was expecting this in their stocking, but here it is. I think that the three things I'm thinking about after hearing this ruling is, one, we already know that former President Trump is going to use this as evidence of alleged election interference by Democrats. We see that his campaign has already said that, even kind of dubiously tying Joe Biden to the decision of the Colorado Supreme Court. And regardless of what the appeal outcome is, he's still going to be able to use this to say either they tried it and they won to get me off the ballot, or they tried it and the Supreme Court stopped them from keeping me off the ballot. And I think the other thing too that I thought a lot about is, even if the numbers from Colorado wouldn't necessarily hurt him in getting a nomination, it's the electability perception blow that's going to hurt him, because there are a lot of Trump voters who want to vote for Trump but are worried that with the legal issues and the chaos that maybe there are too many obstacles for him to win, so they would vote for someone who has a better chance. And I think that we're going to see the remaining Republican candidates who are vying for second and third place really try to hone in on that, to try to get those Trump voters to say, I know that you like him, I know that you like his policies, but for the chaos that surrounds him, he's not the best candidate.
So we've heard how this may play out on the Republican side of things. How do you see Democrats kind of using this moment politically to further boost, what it is that they are going for? How do you see them using this in their messaging?
I hope they don't. Simply because there is nothing good that can come out of speaking about this from the Democrats, from the president's campaign to Democrats down the ballot, because this has already got the stench of politics around it. We know that when it goes to the Supreme Court doesn't act in a vacuum. We will all be thinking about the judges that former President Trump appointed. And so there's no win in this for Democrats to, one, gloat about it or even to weigh in about it. I think that Democrats, particularly those candidates, should let this play out in the courts and not seem as if this is give any fire to what Trump is saying about this being a Democratic political tool.
There's something you mentioned just a bit ago that I want to touch on, and that's the electability perception for the former president. We've seen in a lot of these head-to-head matchups that, the former president is just a bit ahead of President Biden. How do you see this impacting his electability as we get into 2024? I mean, he is far and away ahead of all other contenders here. But how do you see something like this really impacting whether folks make it to the ballot and say, like, okay, this is our guy?
Well, I'll preface this by saying Donald Trump is an anomaly in this situation, because let's remember, he's got 4 ongoing criminal cases, and that didn't really affect the electability argument enough to make him come down in the polls. But what I think we're going to see is, as the voting gets closer, particularly in the early states, Iowa and New Hampshire, they're going to be thinking about this. And, polls are one thing, but elections are another, because you have an actual choice. And I think that that's probably the biggest worry for the Trump campaign, is that those lukewarm Trump voters are going to make the decision for another name just so they have somebody they think can actually beat and win against Joe Biden.
We've mentioned that this is a very unprecedented moment. How soon could we see this end up before the Supreme Court? I'm trying to give ourselves a timeline here as to how soon we could see even more news on something like this. When could we see this go before the Supreme Court?
I don't know what their timing is going to be, but I hope that it is soon, sooner rather than later. I actually hope that there's a resolution before the Iowa caucuses, because I I don't want to see the irresolution of this legal situation affect what voters do in Iowa. I also think that what we're going to see over the next few days and weeks is that regardless of the decision, this is a no-win situation for the Supreme Court. We all remember, or most of us remember, Bush v. Gore and the backlash to that put on the court because it seemed as if they were tipping the scales in an election. Well, that was when the Supreme Court was a lot more popular than they are now. And so I think that whatever the decision, half the country is going to think that they wrongly decided and interfered in an election.
Calvin, you are a political analyst. I know that neither of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen next. But what is it that you're going to be watching out for as we see this play out in the political news cycle?
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, is with what speed the Supreme Court takes up this case. But also what I'm interested in is, there are a lot of other challenges of this same sort around the country. Many of them have been either disregarded or already kicked out. This is going to give new life to those challenges. Things that people thought were not even remotely possible happened just a little while ago. And so I'm going to be looking at that. And it's really going to start the conversation in this country about not whether or not you support Trump or Biden in the election, but whether or not this provision of the 14th Amendment can decide if someone like Trump can even run and be on the ballot in an election.
Yeah, as we said, unprecedented. There are at least a dozen other states with this 14th Amendment issue, and we'll have to see how this plays out going forward. Calvin Dark, political analyst and co-founder of RC Communications. We appreciate you for joining us. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you.